coming off of like 2 years of self-isolation. So the amount of like anxiety and struggle that it's taking me to even to talk about this or share or do any fucking videos, post or whatever, like, it's real. This shit's heavy. Anyway. Okay. Anyways. I guess in a way it's kind of like difficult, or maybe it's just like, just to I don't know how to say difficult, but just being 2 years into my healing process, like, and to be in a position where you feel like you're healed enough to share, to talk about it, or I don't know, it feels like a really big deal for me. This is a big deal for me, because being someone whose throat chakra has been blocked practically like my whole life, this is hard. But it's not impossible. So anyways, I don't really know where to start. I want to make this channel about a lot of fucking things, but first and foremost about my experience as an empath, in healing from narcissistic abuse, in my family life, my friendships. I had a brief marriage. That's kind of when it all really hit the fan. That was 2 years ago. And then like at work, it just all the patterns of narcissistic abuse in my life. So I guess I could start 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I found myself married to a narcissist. 2 years ago is when I started learning about narcissism, because I was in a shitty marriage. But fuck, I don't know where to start right away. I don't know how to talk about this. 2 years ago, okay. It was 2023. I had been married, okay. I got married October 2022. I left my husband at the time, it was September 2023. So we had been together since maybe like, I don't know, 2020 for real. But I've known him for longer. So we had built, like we had a relationship before, but we didn't really actually officially date until 2020-ish, and then got married in 2022. And I left him in 2023. So, you really can't pinpoint any particular time as to when. Like, I can't just say, because we were struggling, but we were always struggling, looking at it in retrospect. I was not happy. I was never happy. Like, let's just be real about that. So what happened was I got married. And I really, to be honest, I got married. I never wanted to get married. Let's put it that way. I never wanted to get married. When I met my ex-husband, we were like friends-ish, but we kind of were like, intimate. But not really. We were sexually intimate, but like, not, I guess now that I know what true intimacy is, I can't really even call that intimacy. That's what I thought it was, okay? So I just have to say, the signs were always there. It was so familiar to me. Like, I always knew I wasn't happy. I always knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't pinpoint it, so I thought I was tripping. I'm like, bitch, you're just tripping. Like, why can't you just be happy or whatever? So anyway, I settled. So we got married. But it was like, yeah, it was so many issues. Like, I don't know where to start with this. How the fuck do you even start talking about this? It's like, do I work backwards? I could work backwards from when I learned about narcissistic abuse. I guess that would make more sense in this case. So like September 2023, when I left him, we had already been having issues. We were both in therapy, but separate therapists. It's like everything that I say, there's so much more detail that I could go to, but I'll get to that. Okay, so we were already in therapy. Like, it was already, shit was hitting the fan since probably like July of that year, for real. That was when I said, you need to go to therapy or I'm gonna have to leave you. So, and then I said I will also go to therapy. So and the reason that happened was because I was at work. We worked together, and I was at work talking to like a guy, a male student, right? And so, I'm telling him, because he was from Haiti, and so I was telling him, oh, like I had just went on my honeymoon to the Dominican Republic, and they were thinking my ex-husband was Haitian. So we were just having this conversation, right? So my ex-husband walked in, I guess, when I was having a conversation with this gentleman, and I could instantly see it in his face that he was like pissed off. So anyway, he proceeds to tell me after this, like when we were in a private setting, a little more private setting, I guess I could say, he's like, if you ever embarrass me like that again, I'm gonna get us both fired. And so here I am, like, having had such an innocent conversation with this fucking gentleman, being threatened. And then for one, even just that statement, if I ever embarrass you like that again, he was implying that I was being a whore, that I was being flirty, that I was flirting with this fucking guy, which I wasn't. Then he was like putting all these words in my mouth, like, you said this and this, and I'm like, I was the one having the conversation. How the fuck are you gonna tell me what I said, what this conversation was about, when he wasn't even there? Like, when I realized that he was in the room, he was like way behind me. So anyway, so I had made the threat. I said, yeah, you need to go to therapy, or like I'm gonna have to leave you because it's not normal. And that was basically like that was like it for me. Like, that was like, because for the longest time I kept bending to those certain little threats, or those certain little accusations of how much of a hoe I was being, or portraying myself to be like whatever. So we ended up going to therapy, and we had separate therapists because he had criteria for his, right? Like, he couldn't have a woman, and the person also could not be Caucasian. So, and I didn't have such criteria. Like, I actually took a recommendation from a family member, and she was like the perfect therapist for me at the time. So, I go to therapy, he goes to his, and I started to do a lot better. Like, I started to being able to like just speak freely about what was really happening, because I had been struggling with this for so long. Like, I had been losing so much weight, and nobody knew what was really going on with me or him. Maybe, they had suspicions. I don't fucking know. Nobody ever asked me if I was okay. Nobody ever really brought any type of attention to like how much weight I lost for real and what the fuck was going on. So I started doing a lot better in therapy. And so we had these like, so we did start therapy, damn. So we started therapy, and in the midst of therapy, I'm trying to think what happened first. In the midst of therapy, it was like this one, it was in, so we were in therapy, but as I was getting better, we kind of like started to grow apart, like for real, like, because it was already happening, but like this time it was like I was barely seeing him because we were, thank God, on opposite shifts at work. So it was like we kind of kept missing each other, and our work situation was interesting because we lived so far away from home that we would have to stay kind of nearby the job. So with that being said, that's how we kept missing each other. So as we started to grow apart, it's just like I started to realize the patterns became more like evident, I guess I could say. Like I just started being more aware of the patterns. And so it was this one time during, after a few months of therapy, like right before I left him. So I was on call. And so I ended up staying at my parents' house, and I had the house to myself because my parents were out of town. Like, this was nothing but God. So I was by myself, and I'm literally on Amazon looking for fucking dog toys or food or some shit. And this book pops up, and I still have the screenshot in my phone from that day. It was September 2023. And so this book pops up on like my recommended, I don't know, because I was not, I think I had bought a book about stoicism, but otherwise I was not looking for books. I was not really reading books. I wasn't into books at the time. Like I was fucking dying. I was literally dying. So the fucking book pops up, and the book title was The Passive Aggressive Covert Narcissist. My stomach dropped. Like as soon as I fucking saw that text, like I just had this feeling like, what the fuck? Like I just knew. It was like, one of those, like you just knew. So then I started to kind of like read about it. And so my thing is that like I had never heard of narcissist before. Well, I had heard the term, but I never looked into it. I didn't really know too much about that. Like I don't even think in nursing school, like in my psych class, I learned specifically really too much about narcissism. So the first time I had ever even heard of it was from my ex-husband, because he supposedly was the victim of his narcissistic family. And so like, I believed him because, they didn't act right. Like, I mean, they were toxic. They were all toxic. And so, I believed him, but I never never had looked too much into it. I just believed what he said. He would say that he was the scapegoat and whatever the fuck, okay? They all do that, I think. I don't know. Whatever. So when I fucking saw that title, The Passive Aggressive Covert Narcissist, like I said, that was kind of like a different terminology than he had used. So like I say, my stomach dropped. So then the whole day, like I was on call for 12 hours. So I was there by myself for 12 hours. And so I just start diving into like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck did I get myself into? How did I end up here? Like, what did I marry? Who is this guy? Like, I just flipped out kind of like, but I had to go home the next day. No, that night I had to go home. So, I just kind of took it all in, I guess I could say. But it was like, low-key, I was freaking out. So I get back to the house. I get back to the house that day, and we ended up, I kind of barely saw him. Like because I was on call the next day. This is how that happened. So I was on call the next day also. So I kind of just went straight to sleep. Like you know, I just went straight into the bed. Like, I avoided him. I avoided everybody. You know, I just kept my mouth fucking shut and just went to sleep, you know. So then the next day, I also had to be up super early, like 5 in the morning, to get to the house. So that way, when I was on call, I'd be closer to the hospital. So I'm Sunday, because that was Sunday. That was Saturday, then the next day was Sunday. So then that Sunday, I go back to my parents' house, and I was by myself. So then I start diving more into this. I'm like looking this shit up. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do? Like, you know, I just kind of just was like, what to do next? Like, how do I deal with this? How do I move on from this? Like, what the fuck is my next step? So, you know, I started to like see videos on YouTube about how you can test the narcissist. And so that's how you would clearly know that they were a narcissist. Because, you know, when I initially started like kind of looking into it, like I was even questioning, like, fuck, am I a narcissist? Like, you know, when I was reading this stuff, you know, only to find out like we all have narcissistic traits, right? And so, you know, and I think that's something that all empaths kind of go through, especially the dark ones. Like, you know, shit, am I the fucking narcissist? So anyway, I end up, this shit just happened so perfectly. Like, I end up going back to the house that night. And so, like, I already had in my head that I was going to have to test him how they said, right? And so the videos on YouTube would say, like, you know, just take away all your emotions from them, and then they'll throw you out like trash, right? And so, or they'll start devaluing you or whatever. So I had already planned to do this with him, but I didn't realize how fast the shit was gonna take place. So literally, I get back to the house that day, and you know, I'm very like distant, like very detached from him, because in my head I already was moving on, like I was getting the fuck out of there. I just didn't know when, how that shit was gonna take place. So, you know, I noticed, I sat on the couch and I'm watching TV, and like I said, I'm very distant or whatever, like nonchalant. And so he starts to like he picks up the broom and starts to sweep and mop. So like when I saw him doing that, I saw the manipulation behind it, because the way that he was sweeping and mopping, it was literally like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're not even, like, he was moving around, like he was going through the motions, right? Just because that's something that he thought would please me, him cleaning the house and doing all this shit, right? So, but I noticed that I was like, wow, like, has this shit been so obvious the whole time? But you know, but I just automatically knew what the fuck he was doing. And so then, so I had this thing, it was a Sunday night, and anytime that I was off on a Monday, I would have this thing called Me Day Monday, where everybody would have to leave me alone, and I would spend the night up watching TV, having the rest, like the house to myself, you know, kind of like, and by everybody, he had like a stepdaughter, which she actually wasn't even there that night. So like, and then we had the dogs. So he ends up asking me, he's like, oh, could you lay down with me for a little bit? Because he had to work the next day, but I didn't. And I was like, well, it's Me Day Monday. Like, you know, I was kind of basically like, no. He's like, I knew you were going to say that. But then something in me was just like, you know, actually, I'll just lay down with you until you fall asleep, right? So I literally laid down. This is graphic, okay? I laid down in the bed next to him. And I had on like my noise canceling headphones. So I was completely like disengaged from him, right? But so I lay down, my back is facing towards him. And then obviously, you know, a little bit later, he's like feeling on me, trying to have sex. And so to be honest, like, I'm very like non-emotional with him, which is different for me, right? Or not touchy-feely, not even looking at him, right? I'm not interacting, I'm not talking to him, but I let him have sex with me, kind of like. And then it was like during this moment where he just stops. He's like, are you okay? Like, you haven't said anything, like, you're not doing anything. And so I just turn around and I'm like, well, if it's affection that you want from me, I don't really have that for you right now. And so then he says, well, maybe we should just split up. And so then I'm like, okay. You know, because it had to be his idea for us to split up. Otherwise, he would be the victim. So already I was fucking winning. I was like, yeah. So then after he said that, I was like, I got what I wanted. Because obviously he showed me like exactly what the video said. As soon as I took away that emotion and in my affection and everything, it was like, oh, you're trash. You're disposable to me. Which that had been a pattern, right? For some time. But we had just been married, like not even a year. So him saying that maybe we should split up, I was like, you know, that's the best idea. That's the best thing I've heard up until this point. I'll just go back to my parents' house, you know, whatever. Like I was very calm and peaceful about it. I'm like, you can keep everything here. Cause I had actually furnished most of the house. Like when I moved into there, it was like, there was nothing. There was like just couches. And so, you know, I was kind of like, you can keep the stuff. And he's like, yeah, okay, you know, okay. And so then he ends up going to sleep. I go have my me day Monday. But that night, literally, I spent a lot of the time starting to pack my shit. Like, discreetly. You know, like I started putting things places. Like I started to kind of map out what I wanted to keep, what I was going to take or whatever. And so I end up going to sleep. And I remember, because I just knew he was going to be working and I was going to get the fuck out of there. So that morning he wakes up for work, and mind you, I felt him like, because I had my eye shields on, like I would sleep with these eye shields on. And so I felt him give me a kiss on the cheek when he left. And so I didn't respond. I just pretended like I was still sleeping. And so then he leaves. And that whole fucking day, I think I got up at like, I don't know, maybe 8. No, because he left. He would have probably left at 8 or 9. So whenever he fucking left, I fucking got my ass up. I started packing shit. And so then he was working, and that was an hour away from the house. So I was kind of like freaking out the whole time. Because I'm like, what if he fucking shows back up? Like, you know, what if he comes back? Or so, and then we also had a ring alarm at the time. So then I had to like, basically what I did was I didn't want the ring alarm to keep going off and alerting his phone, because I didn't know what he was doing at work, if he'd be paying attention and seeing that I'm packing my shit. So I basically packed all the shit, put everything close to the door, and then when it was actually time for me to go, I just did one swift move, put everything in the car and left. So that way the ring alarm wasn't going crazy all day, you know. So I finally, it was like 6 something, maybe 6 p.m. or so, when I finally was getting on the freeway. Actually, I have a screenshot about that too. But anyway, he fucking calls me. I'm on the freeway. My car is packed with a bunch of shit. He fucking FaceTimes me, and he's at work, thank God. Because when he called, I was like, what if he's like nearby? Like, I was just totally panicking, right? So he calls me, and so he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm going to the house, my parents' house, just like we talked about. And so then I honestly like was trying to rush off the phone for one, because I was driving and that's not safe, and there was like laws, you know, there's laws in Michigan about that. So I was like, yeah, I'm going over there, you know, and so I was like, but I'm gonna have to talk to you later because I'm driving. And so then he's like, well, I'm on lunch right now. And so basically that to me was saying he was on his lunch break at work, so I needed to call him before his lunch break was over. And so I'm like, okay, you know, all right. So I just get off the phone, get to the house, and I don't hear from him because he was still at work. So I don't hear from him until like, I don't know, it was like midnight. But when I tell you that I got to my fucking parents' house and unpacked my stuff, and my brother was there to help me, and he came over and changed the locks because the ex still had a key to my parents' house, because I actually owned the house. So when I tell you that I got to the fucking house and I could finally take a deep breath, like I had not been able to actually breathe that whole time, and I did realize it, but it was the norm for so long that when I got to the fucking house, I was like, whoa, like it was just like a weight lifted off of my chest. So I end up hearing from him at like midnight or whatever it was, because he might have like tried to call me when he got off work. and I didn't answer or text me, and I didn't respond at all. So then when he got to the house, I knew because the ring alarm went off. But like so I knew because the ring alarm went off, but I got a text shortly after that. So like I said, I knew that he had made it back to his house because he sent me a text and he said, I feel empty as fuck. I don't give a fuck. I felt great. I felt like I had a whole fucking life ahead of me. Like I had a second chance. Like, you know, like I was on top of the fucking world because I could finally fucking breathe. So, that was really just kind of like the beginning of like me leaving. Because then we, for one, still worked together. Two, we were still legally married. So that was just like the first step. But it felt amazing. I'm just gonna be honest. Like it was perfect. But not to say that it wasn't hard. Like that shit was really hard. But yeah, that is the story of how I tested the narcissist and left his bitch ass. I'm gonna I'll probably post more stories about the times leading up to like that, because there was so many clues, you know. When you really look back at it in retrospect, you're like, yeah, it was pretty obvious. I just didn't know. I wasn't aware, you know. And so having that awareness and looking back on it, and you know, that's everything. Like and part of the healing process, you know, because when you look back through everything that you ignored, you know, you really start to realize like I could have just followed my intuition the whole time. But anyway, that's it for now.